You serve with a lot of these Republican governors who've come out against these mandates from President Biden. Are they on solid ground? How do you explain their actions?
Well, look, there's three things about what's happened this week that concern me, and I'm someone who's been advocating from the beginning and still advocate that everyone should get vaccinated, and I think it's a mistake not to. First one is I think there's shaky legal ground here. When you look at the OSHA statutes that are being used, I think they're really on shaky ground as to whether they can really force this or not. So it's subject to legal challenge. Second, let's remember that the politicization of these vaccines started back in the presidential campaign, and it was started by Vice President Harris, who said that I will not take a vaccine that's approved by Trump or by Trump's regulators. That put this in a totally different area that allowed it to be politicized, and that politicization is continuing now. And third, I really do think that your question to the Surgeon General was on point. This is going to harden opposition. Sometimes when you're a leader, you have to go in and use a sledgehammer. And I've been known to do that when I was governor. Sometimes it's appropriate. But this one was not the time to do it. We have to be persuasive. We have to continue to persuade. And I know that takes time.
How do you respond to the argument that that wasn't working, and that when you look at the mandates, whether it's the Veterans Department, whether it's DOD, whether it's the workplaces like Tyson's that Dr. Murthy cited, that when you have the mandates, they work? Look,
working for the government and ordering government workers to have a mandate, there is one thing. Extending that to 2/3 of all the jobs and making it either get vaccinated or not, it's also contradictory logically, George, because what they're telling us is, by all the data, that vaccinated people are very, very well protected from anyone who's unvaccinated and who has it. Yet they're saying to us, we have to do this to protect you. Well, that's protecting the unvaccinated from the unvaccinated. They're making choices.
I disagree about the OSHA finding. I think OSHA is supposed to protect workplace safety, and we know that right now COVID is one of the most dangerous threats to workplace safety, because when people are working together, and we know this Delta variant has made people much more sensitive when people are working together, even if they're vaccinated, if they come in contact with somebody without a vaccine, they could get the Delta COVID variant.
So
I would disagree. I also want to push back a little bit on blaming the political nature of this on Kamala Harris. She does not deserve that. The reality is that at the time she made that comment, Donald Trump was trying to push hydrochloroquine and bleach injection in people's eyes. And since that time, your party continues to push the fact that folks should not be wearing masks, that folks should be pushing back against this. So the politicization of this is way more in the Republican camp than it could ever be from one comment that Kamala Harris made last year.
Sarah, I want to bring this back to the legal ground as well. Some legal experts do agree with Governor Christie that the OSHA statute is being stretched too far. On the other hand, the Supreme Court has upheld vaccine mandates in the past.
This isn't a question about the vaccine mandate. That is going to be upheld, no question, legally, precedent going back more than 100 years. The question is whether OSHA has the authority to do this under their emergency powers. That is much different. Now, there's a whole legal weirdness to this, where it's going to skip a district court that we're used to going to. It's going to go straight to the circuits. Then it's actually all going to go to one circuit. So you may have 17 governors bring this, and it's still going to be one single case that we're all going to then watch. I think this will look a lot like Obamacare in terms of what it's going to do on the Republican side. Everyone's going to be able to move behind this, not on the substance. People are going to be for vaccines, for vaccine mandates, even if a company does it themselves, but they're going to be against OSHA doing it, the Biden administration doing it. I think that something the Biden administration politically did here incorrectly was wait. I think there's a lot of, why didn't this happen 3 months ago if it was so important? Either you didn't think you had the legal authority, or you didn't think it actually was an emergency. Either way, it's going to hurt them legally.
No, they didn't do it 3 months ago because they did exactly what Chris said. They simply tried to persuade, and the numbers changed. When 98% of the people in ICUs are unvaccinated, when people who are having heart attacks are dying but they can't get treated, they said we have to move. Companies were making decisions as well. If we look at the history of this country, it was corporate America that forced America to change when it came to the civil rights movement. Because you know why? Because government was moving too slow. And so there are too many people in this country who are stuck on stupid, who don't want to own up to what's going on right now. And when you have 670,000 people who have died, 41 million have gotten COVID, and we are still having problems, and children are now dying, somebody has to lead. And you know what? Leaders take the hit, and make the decisions, which is why he was elected. And so when the data changes and you want to save people, you go there. Now, Republican governors want to stand out there and say this is wrong. Fine, DeSantis, you got to run for re-election. Governor Greg Abbott in my home state, who's embarrassing us with his decisions, he has to run for re-election. Let's then see what happens where these people stand. But if we keep seeing folks die, I dare say leaders lead, and the rest of the folks who want to fight this, they can just simply fight it and they want to in the courts. But too many people are dying in America.
Seems like we're beyond the point that Dr. Murthy was lamenting, turning on each other over the vaccines.
Yeah.
Well, but the thing is, if you are a family member who had to bury somebody, you're dealing with. I had the head of the black morticians on my show. 130 funeral home directors have died from this. Pastors are dying. Bishop Harry Jackson, who preached in the Oval Office with Trump on Easter Sunday, died of COVID several months later. This is real, and at some point, leaders need to stand up and say, enough is enough.
Listen, emotions don't change the law.
Death does.
No, emotions don't, and neither does death. Doesn't change the law. Congress changes the law, Roland.
But guess what?
Change. No.
Emotions don't change.
Emotions. No. You don't act lawlessly as a leader and say, let's let the courts do it. I understand that everybody wants, we had this conversation last week on a different topic. The law is the law.
Well, who decides lawlessly?
Look, and the president for 3 months said, and he didn't not do it because he didn't think he needed to do it. He affirmatively said, I don't have the legal authority to do mandates. Now he's changed his mind.
No, but his original position was that he just didn't want to go there. He was trying to resist it as long as he possibly
George,
could.
he said something, yes, he said that, but he also said in an answer, I don't have the legal authority to do this.
And in that sense, it looks a lot like DACA, where President Obama said he didn't have the legal authority, and then he did it anyway. This administration has done that with the eviction moratorium, where they knew they didn't have the legal authority through the CDC, and the court struck it down. And what their political thought, I believe, was that we can do this and we'll get it for 30 days.
Well, I was just going to say, isn't the gamble, when we have to move on, I know you guys are going to come back on another topic, isn't the gamble that in the meantime, more people will get vaccinated, they'll have to get vaccinated?
Lawlessly and unconstitutionally, that's a risk in and of itself to undermine the rule of law.
When Donald Trump was president, like you all allowed Donald Trump to get away with literal murder. He stretched the bounds of the law constantly for different aims, not to save people, but to destroy and to divide. So the reality is we need this test right now. OSHA can be and should be tested.
We shouldn't undermine the rule of law to do it.
Acting lawlessly.
Law evolves.
Acting lawlessly.
This is a very different circumstance.
Acting lawlessly unconstitutional is determined by the courts. When they make the decision, they'll make the decision. That's what, but you still move until they make the decision.
Except when the executive says he doesn't have the authority and he's acting lawlessly. Look, you don't mind about the rule of law being violated now, but when the rule of law is violated for something,
I'm a lawyer. I do mind if the rule of law is violated.
Well, when the rule of law is violated for something you support, you'll be screaming at this table.
We got to take a break. I know you guys are going to come back in a minute.